Speaking truth and power, unlocking minds, one day at a time, day at a time. Speaking truth and power, unlocking minds, one day at a time, day at a time. Truth of the matter is that truth really matters, yeah. Truth of the matter is that truth really matters, yeah. In the beginning, I was back and forth like badminton, lacking wisdom, no direction for proper decisions. I heard my bro had a show, so I started to listen. Truth of the matter, ain't no comparing the competition. The kid feeling blessed, cause it's clear as Windex. After talking with Dex, I know just where to step. I know the path gon' be narrow, but my eyes on the sparrow. And the truth of the matter is that truth really matters. Truth of the matter, that truth really matters. Hey, truth of the matter.
Hey, welcome to Truth of the Matter, where we are having transparent conversations dealing with today's issues and bringing solutions to help you navigate your world. I am your host, Dexter Peggins. And listen, I believe that today's show should be a pretty interesting one. It is entitled, I Am Talking to the Man in the Mirror. Now, I'm aging myself a little bit. Just recently, we acknowledged, or many people acknowledged, the birthday of Michael Jackson, and so you'll, if that man in the mirror, if it rings a bell, that was definitely one of my favorite songs from Michael Jackson. It was discussing accountability well before I knew what accountability was. Now, listen, I know this is the Boosie generation, and I've heard him go on record as saying that R. Kelly is greater than Michael Jackson. However, I beg to differ. Michael Jackson was definitely bad. Did you catch that? Pun intended. But listen, he was a force to be reckoned with in his time. But nevertheless, today's show is not based on that song. But it does, today's message is, it reflects a similar sentiment, I believe, to what Michael Jackson was conveying in the lyrics of that particular song. But listen, before we get too far in depth with our discussion today, allow me to do what is customary here, and that is share the quote of the day. Today's quote is simply this: procrastination is the enemy of greatness. Procrastination is the enemy of greatness. Listen, I know plenty of people. I myself am one of those persons where I have become the prisoner of perfection, feeling like, I couldn't get started on the thing, project or whatever, because I didn't feel like what I had to offer was ready. Feeling like I needed, this next certification, the right setup, the right lights, the right cameras, the right backers. And in those moments, because I didn't get started, the thing never transpired because I was waiting for my perception of perfection to be realized. And because it was never realized, I never got started. When the reality is that in those moments, this should be the indication to go ahead and get started and continue to build upon what it is that you are beginning. Those moments where you might not have the right lights, the right setups, the right backers just yet, allow those to be moments where we are crafting and becoming better in the thing that we're offering, as opposed to assuming that it will be this great thing once everything comes together. No, these are the moments, these are the things that make up the process for us to become that better version of ourselves. And what I want to tell you all who are listening is that there are many people that are sleeping on some great products, some great services. Uh, they have needed skills, they have needed services, but because they're afraid of the start, there are a lot of people who are going to miss out on the greatness that you are supposed to be offering up into this world. And I would caution you very strongly that you not take that gift, to the grave because of procrastination. Identify what is absolutely necessary as far as the minimum, which you need to get started. To begin, uh, get that addressed. And here's the thing, go ahead and get started. Grow in your gifting. If you don't hear anything else as it pertains to the basis of this quote of the day, grow in your gifting, get started because the world needs what you have to offer. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get started on our message for today. I'm talking to the man in the mirror. Here's the thing, that man in the mirror, he does not talk back. Unless you have one of those funny mirrors, those little magic mirrors or something. I'm willing to bet that that mirror is not talking back. But here's the thing, as I'm talking to the man in the mirror, if I'm willing to maintain that conversation, here's what the man in the mirror does. He reveals a lot of things within me that, if I'm honest with myself, I rarely want to address those things that the man in the mirror is echoing back to me. When there's no one else around to blame, he highlights to me that I might be the reason why things are messed up. Oftentimes we're guilty of giving, uh, criticizing, or condemning people for the decisions that they make. But oftentimes we want people to give us grace for the things that we mess up, those mistakes that we make. But the man in the mirror, once again, if we're honest with ourselves, what he should be doing is holding us to a even playing field. There should be a measure of accountability that we're having as we're having this self-talk with ourselves. The man in the mirror, he reminds us of those things uh, that I said I was going to do, but never got around to, that whole procrastination piece. When I use words like it wasn't my time or that they won't understand me, he tells me that at the root of it, the thing that I'm replaying in my own mind, the thing that I'm rehearsing within myself, what it boils down to is that I'm operating in fear. It's I've conditioned myself to be afraid to do the things that I know that I'm supposed to do. And because I don't want to address the truth, ultimately what ends up happening is I avoid having this self-talk. I end up going through the motions, resorting back to my comfort zone of blaming others rather than taking on my own self accountability. One of the hats that I'm blessed to wear, I consider myself fortunate in this regards, is that I am a minister. I'm a licensed and ordained elder. Um, and weekly, I get to shepherd a community of believers. And one of the predominant themes that we have addressed and that we continue to address is the topic of spiritual maturity. This is a coming into a place of recognizing that God wants us to shift from children to sons. And when I use this term sons, and what you'll see if you're a person who is given over to reading the scriptures, that particular word sons is not relegated to males. It's actually in reference to being mature. Literally, someone who's in a posture or position to come into being able to inherit something, who can handle things. I am a proud father. I have two sons. Uh, they're coming into their teenage years, and so as we progress, one of the things is we progress from children uh, into eventually adults. As a male, they will always be my sons, but they will not always be my children because they're not always going to be children, but they'll always be my sons. I hope that makes sense. And so, in recognizing this term about sons and what I've been talking to our community about spiritual maturity, is recognizing that I do not have to have my hand held every step of the way during life, but it's a recognition that the life I live, the decisions that I make, they are rooted in understanding that the moves I make are associated with the man that I am and the man that I aspire to be. I have an awareness of who I want to be. And if I understand who I want to be, then my decisions and the way I govern my life should be reflective about what internally I'm making a decision to do and to become. Now, I'm not going to turn this into a Bible study. You can catch me on the internet and at some other capacities if you want to be a part of that. But what I will share is this, because I'm aligning this with this conversation, or I believe that this particular scripture I'm going to share aligns itself with what we're talking about today. And this is First Corinthians 13, verse 11 through 12. Allow me to read it to you. It says, "When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put away the childhood behind me. I put away the childish things. For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror, then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. I'm not a child. God does not look at me as a child. He looks at me as a son. And here's what I want to tell you all is that maturity requires that we engage with the man in the mirror. Listen, we're going to pause for a few moments. Maybe in this moment, you can quickly go look at him in the mirror, size yourself up. But if you don't, I want you to stick around for this quick commercial break, and we'll be right back.
There is a prevailing crisis that has crippled families and communities for decades. This crisis has a direct association to higher crime rates, increased poverty, and cost the nation millions of dollars annually. The crisis is the epidemic of fatherlessness. What would the world look like if fathers were not only physically present, but emotionally available as well? What would the conversation between the repentant father and the dejected son sound like? Recognizing that sons, both young and old, need to hear a heart of a father serves as the motivation for this literary work. This book is for those who need wisdom and guidance, never had those necessary moments with their father, or wish they had more moments with their father. Through the affirmation of a father's love, this book will traverse the difficult path from disappointment to hope, and from alienation to reconciliation.
And we are back. Listen, that was the commercial for my book, Dear Son, The Words of a Father to the Heart of a Son. A great book. I'm going to pat myself on the back. But nevertheless, you can get a copy of that book from my website, dexterpagansjr.com. And it's also available on Amazon. Long story short, that book really addresses a lot of issues that humanity deals with as a result of how their father did or did not interact with them. You'll be surprised with how many people are literally carrying burdens from the absence or the inactivity of a father, somebody who might not have been there, been able to emotionally or physically give them the encouragement or the push that they needed in their formative years or even into their adult years. Those traumas or those issues, they'll find you where they find you. And so this book speaks to a lot of those issues. But what it does is also it encourages us by offering the voice of a affirming father, a loving father, our heavenly father, to understand who you are, to come into a place of your full identity as the person that you're meant to be, and ultimately and hopefully addressing some of those wounds that you might carry, so that you might not pass them on to future generations. So, listen, we're going to move forward with this particular conversation today. I'm talking to the man in the mirror. Uh, I want to share a few insights with you all that I believe will help you navigate this thing called self-talk. Uh, as we're talking to this man in the mirror, as we're talking to ourselves, in essence. The first thing that I want to put before you is that the key to change behavior comes from recognizing the issue and being willing to engage the issue. I'll say that again. The key to changed behavior comes from recognizing the issue and being willing to engage the issue. Oftentimes, we have a tendency to run away from the things that need to be addressed. Uh, what if I told you that there was no cavalry coming? That in essence, you will have to be your own superhero. Would you rise to the occasion or would you shrink under the pressures of life? And sadly, many people are shrinking under the pressures of life because they're waiting for someone to come save them. But literally, your help is closer than you believe. Your help may rest in information that you already have, but you're unwilling to put into operation. And that's what I mean. That's what I'm conveying in this particular point about the change behavior comes from recognizing the issue and being willing to engage the issue. Listen, it is what it is. We're familiar with that expression. It is what it is, meaning that, hey, you see it, you understand it for what it is. But if you want to change it, you have to be the catalyst behind changing it. If you don't like how it is, make a plan to put something into place so that you can see something different. A lot of times people assume that dormant and suppressed character flaws equate to an issue being fixed, or they also may equate this to the issue being addressed. But here's the thing: in reality, just because it's dormant does not mean that it's fixed. When you find yourself in a position or situation where the issue is provoked and the flaw where an issue arises and the flaw is provoked as a result of that issue, that should let you know that you have not addressed the problem within inside of yourself. You just suppressed it. So every time I get into a situation and let's say I spaz out, I'm going 100 when it really only requires 10%, but I'm going extreme every time, then that should be an indicator to myself that something in me is unresolved. And I cannot afford to keep getting unhinged about silly stuff or simple stuff as a result of my unwillingness to get my own self in check. In this regards, what I want to encourage you all is that you have to know your triggers. You'll be surprised with how many people do not know their triggers. They just assume that this is how they are, and that becomes the invitation to do whatever you want to do. When in reality, that is a sign of immaturity. I remember my kids, acting out, and they didn't do this too long. But I remember when my kids would act out and they would have to we would have to get them in check. Uh a lot of us in our adult phase, we act out because of the things that we're not getting the things that we want because we're not having our way. But that response is indicative once again of an issue that is unresolved. And my question to you is, how long are you willing to let it go unresolved? The other thing that I want to put before you all is that uh, stop rehashing conversations that have no value. If it's an issue that you have done all that you can and it cannot be fixed, stop rehashing it in your mind. A lot of us are tormenting ourselves over things that are literally outside of our control. If you can honestly assess within yourself that you've done everything to the best of your ability, if you can acknowledge that, hey, if I were given this opportunity to do it over again, yes, I would do it differently, but I've done what I know to do in the now. then what I want to say to you is you have to learn to give yourself permission to move on. Note how you would do things differently in the future in the event that a similar issue arises, but give yourself permission to move on. The last thing that I'll put before you all before we get out of here for today is make a decision concerning the type of man. And I know that we have women listeners as well. So let me say this. Make a decision concerning the type of man or woman that you want to be, and get on with the process of becoming that person. It's not just going to happen by happenstance, just because you want the initial desire to become a thing does not make you a thing until you begin the process of doing the work to become that thing. We often times make space for excuses as to why we aren't the type of people that we want to be. And that literally boils down to a decision. Make the decision to get started with the process. Small daily incremental changes can lead to significant impacts over the course of time. And I believe I read that somewhere, maybe that was Atomic Habits, if I'm not mistaken. But nevertheless, small incremental changes over the course of time, what they end up revealing is they become something significant and impactful if we're willing to stick with it. And with that being said, allow me to close out today's episode, because I referenced him in the beginning. Let me share some of the lyrics from this particular song, The Man in the Mirror, by none other than Brother Michael Jackson. And here's where it says, I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways. And no message could have been any clearer. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself, then make that change. I'm Dexter Peggins, and this has been Truth of the Matter. I will see you all next week. Take care, and God bless.
Speaking truth and power, unlocking minds, one day at a time, day at a time. Speaking truth and power, unlocking minds, one day at a time, day at a time. Truth of the matter is that truth really matters, yeah. Truth of the matter is that truth really matters, yeah. In the beginning, I was back and forth like Batman, lacking wisdom, no direction for proper decisions. I heard my bro had a show, so I started to listen. Truth of the matter, ain't no comparing the competition. The kid feeling blessed, cause it's clear as when Dex after talking with Dex. I know just where to step. I know the path gon' be narrow, but my eyes on the sparrow. And the truth of the matter is that truth really matters. Truth of the matter, that truth really matters. Hey, truth of the matter.